All right, today we'll be replacing a belt on a Kawasaki Prairie 360 motor. Now I've pulled a couple of the bolts off already just to get us started, but we've got 10mm headed bolts all the way around this clutch cover that we'll have to remove. Some of them are a little bit tricky down underneath here. You can use a swivel joint or a long extension to get underneath there. A lot of times this panel is thin enough to where you can push it back and are able to get between the clutch cover and the panel. But we've got a handful of those bolts there, and then we've also have this clamp here that is a boot that goes onto this cover that we'll have to replace. That's a Phillips headed screw bolt there. Then we've got a 1 6-pin connector here, and that is just a tab that you pull back kind of from the back side of that, and then pull that off. And then we've got another one here that we have to remove. Now, once you remove these, you do not want to turn your key on. That when you hear when your four-wheeler starting, you hear that belt actuator moving. That is what it's doing there, and you do not want to turn that key on without that plugged in. Now that being said, I'll show you another video. Show you a video here in a little bit of me resetting that belt light. So that's your cover there, it's off. And this is what trips the belt trips the sensor here when that belt hits that. So we've got a belt on here now that is extremely loose. Our clutch is tight, feels okay. There's some light grooving in there, but you want to inspect it really good when you're taking it apart. Now we want to remove this bolt. We've got a 3/4 inch socket here that we'll use to remove this. And this is right-hand threaded bolts, so you'll turn it clockwise to loosen it. And they do that so the clutch doesn't slip off or kind of turn itself off. Now, next we've got a puller just like this, and different manufacturers make them, but this puller is going to go all the way in. It's going to thread into the clutch actually, and then push against the crank. Now we've got, and this will be regular threaded now, so you just screw that in the normal way and put a socket on there and run that farther in. And we might not have enough air there or enough juice to get that off, so we will use an impact. Now if we can't get it with that, next thing that I do, so I'll grab a smaller socket here. What I do is just tap on this. Sometimes that'll break that free. Sometimes these are extremely tough to get off there. So there we go. You'll feel it pop there, and then it'll come out quick. So that is it popping off there. Now we'll pull this puller off while it's still sitting here. And the puller comes off. So now your clutch is able to come off. And it's the reason why you're able to remove it like that is because this crankshaft is tapered in, and then this is tapered as well. So it kind of pushes it on there to keep it tight. And we've got your clutch here off. Inspect it, make sure there's no major grooves. In this one there is some grooves. The customer doesn't want to replace this clutch, so we're just going to put a new belt on there, put it back together. So most of the time your front clutch here, your drive clutch, is where there's an issue. Now you want to make sure your belt's going the correct direction if it is directional, and this particular belt is not directional, so we'll just stick it on there. So now what we're going to do is put it on the back clutch there, and you want to pull it kind of as hard as you can. And that kind of pushes it down in there. Now the next thing we're going to do is put this clutch kind of in behind it so it'll go into the groove there. And now I like to turn that clutch enough to where you can get it on there, and then just kind of push against that crank and slip it on there. And that'll suck it down into your rear clutch here as you're going on. So there we go, now your clutch is on there. Now what I do is put thread lock on this bolt here so that we don't ever have to worry about it coming off. And then again, remember that this bolt is irregular threaded, so we've got to turn it back now. We've got to turn it counterclockwise to install it. And once we put thread lock on that bolt, tighten it down there, and we'll go back together with that clutch cover. Now you want to be careful. Down here is a sensor. You want to make sure you don't break that off. It's a common problem that breaks off, kind of pushing around, playing in this area. Also, this wire here, make sure you will catch it. You just want to make sure you don't pull too hard on it and damage it. Now you want to make sure that your clutch cover is upside down, remember, but you want to make sure this is pushed back so that if the belt hits it, it'll trip it and push it forward. So you want to make sure it's pushed back, going back together. And then just slide that clutch in. I like to put the front in first. That kind of allows you to push it all the way forward. And then getting the boot on there. And you can use a screwdriver to kind of pull that around there. Obviously making sure you're not damaging that boot. There we go, slips right back in there. Tighten up all your 10 millimeters, tighten up this clamp, and then we'll shoot this video here, resetting this belt. But you want to make sure it's completely on.